Hello, I'd like to inform you that this podcast was recorded prior to the launch of the City St George's Emergency Services Mental Health Conference, which was due to take place on the 1st of July. Unfortunately, the conference has had to be cancelled and is likely to be rescheduled in September of 2025 due to unforeseen circumstances that have occurred at City St George's Tooting campus. Thank you and enjoy the podcast.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to yet another TASC podcast, the show where we talk about important issues and topics that face the UK's ambulance family. My name is Karl Demian, and I'm the CEO of TASC, the ambulance staff charity. Next week is the annual Emergency Services Mental Health and Wellbeing Conference being held at City St George's University and hosted by the Paramedic department. And to mark that occasion, I'm very pleased to be sitting down with Katie Pavoni, who is Associate Professor and Course Director for the Paramedic Science Programme at City St George's, to talk about the challenges facing trainee paramedics and the differences in the role since Katie, who is herself a paramedic, became a paramedic. Good morning, Katie.
Good morning, Carl. It's lovely to be here with you today.
Excellent, excellent. First thing I wanted to talk to you about, just to say thank you for taking time off, because it's only a week to your conference, which has been an event that we at TASC have had the pleasure, a number of us, to attend on many occasions, and I'm looking forward to being with you next week as well. Could you tell us a little bit about the conference? And particularly, I'm intrigued by its title this year, Pressure to Power.
I absolutely can. I'm really excited for the conference. It's going to be our 8th year of running the Student Paramedic Emergency Services Mental Health and Wellbeing Conference. So the conference is a co-produced event by our department and our Student Paramedic Blue Light Champions, who undertake a peer support role within the Department of Paramedics and have been doing so since 2017. It's quite unique. It was the first scheme that was launched in the UK, and it focused on volunteer support given by third-year students to others, recognising the difficulties that student paramedics were facing, and actually that they were the best people to provide support to each other in conjunction with the programme team. So they volunteer throughout the course of the academic year, and the final thing that they do is the conference. So it's a big build-up of all of the work that they do, from academic support and study support, placement support, to then a final celebratory event, really, of the importance of looking after our mental health and well-being. So the theme changes every year, and this year is Pressure to Power, so understanding how we can thrive in the environments in which we're working, and also sometimes how we can overcome those obstacles that we're facing to understand ourselves better and our vulnerabilities better, and then the patients and communities we go on to serve. So yeah, we're incredibly excited, and to you, grateful to you for supporting us always in our annual event. And as I mentioned, it's the only student-led conference, so we're very proud of that.
I think you should be, and I think one of the things that I've noticed on the occasions I've been there is, as you say, the enthusiasm, dare I say it, the dynamism of the team that organised the conference, but really, more than anything else, how it seeks to address those challenges which are going to be faced once people go into the workplace, but without losing sight of the challenges that are faced when people are doing the academic part, but also the placement. So in terms of this year, do you think there are any themes emerging from your work that reflect on the challenges that are going to be faced when people graduate or when they go on to their first placement, for example?
I think historically, we know with regarding mental health and well-being generally, and then within the paramedic profession generally, there's been multi-layers of stigma. I think for student paramedics, that's amplified even more so with the pressure and the expectation of what does it mean to be a student paramedic? Will my mentors like me? Am I, these are the kind of things that I hear all the time. Am I going to fit in? What if I, quote unquote, look silly? And really, it's about understanding that those students are under a significant amount of pressure. Kind of owning the fact that vulnerability is really important for us to develop coping strategies and strength, and those things, which whether you're taking them into your first placement or as a graduate into the profession, it's about understanding that there are times that we're going to struggle. The profession is one that has an amplified risk of difficulty, but that's not the abnormal thing. Sometimes the situations we find ourselves in are the abnormal thing, not our responses to them. So I think in terms of themes, it's about understanding our own vulnerabilities, how we can then develop personal sort of coping skills to transfer into practice.
That's really quite interesting, because one of the things that we're thinking about quite a lot in TASC is how you help people to develop those coping skills, those coping mechanisms. We were talking the other day that no one feels that there's anything wrong with going to the gym or running or swimming to improve physical fitness and health, but we don't always take the same approach to our mental well-being or coping skills.
Absolutely.
Do you think things have changed within the ambulance service in the time that you've been a paramedic, but also leading on the training of the future paramedics?
That is such an interesting question, Karl. And I would say, because I'm a hopeful optimist, I say yes. I do think that we have been moving in the right direction. And I think organisations such as TASC, our professional body, the college, have really, really invested in moving that culture forward and creating a more positive culture around mental health. I think we still have, in my personal opinion, a long road and a long way to go to normalise or equalise some of the conversations that we have about our mental health and our physical health. And I think that stigma is still tarnishing some of those conversations, and they set people back in their recovery and their wellness in general. So I think there's a lot of work to do, but I think that we are definitely moving in the right direction.
I suppose that the slightly provocative question really is that, from your perspective, given that, we're all very conscious that as we age, the generations that follow on from us have very different approaches. Do you think it's moving quick enough to cope with the societal change that's there, or do you think someone needs to put the foot on the accelerator pedal, for example?
I think you're right. The attitudes are becoming more positive. Conversations are becoming more open. But what I do think I would like to see happen more to really make sure that we're kind of matching that speed is that we need to be working together. So whether that's the third sector, whether that's the ambulance trust, whether that's the universities, we need to be pulling together in the same direction. And I think it's the harnessing of us all working together that will then catch up with perhaps some of the demographics of those that are joining higher education or the ambulance service. So I think there's work to be done in that way for us all to be pulling in the same direction. And some of that, I think, comes from a place of, we haven't been speaking about this in the way that we have for a number of years. We've got amazing people around the country doing wonderful work, but we need to be working together to pool those resources more, I think.
Okay. Which is why I think the blue light champions concept that you have at City St George's is really interesting. I know it goes back as part of the legacy that came from the original St George's. Is something that's quite surprising, because you said earlier on, I think, since 2017, and I really do admire what's gone on there, because that's 8 years ago since that was set up, but it still seems to be a very vibrant and well thought through program that actually must be filtering people into um, the ambulance service as a whole who are actually attuned to, one, the need to support themselves and to develop themselves, but also because it's a peer support program to support others. How have you managed to, well, can you tell me first where it started, where the idea came from of the champions, the Blue Light Champions? But really, I'm most interested in how you've kept it going for so long. And a sort of third part, I like asking these complex questions. And a third part, do you get any contact with your alumni that have come through the Blue Light Champions?
Yep, and that is a very meaty set of questions that
Indeed.
and that anybody would know me would say these are probably my favourite questions ever to talk about, because I'm
Good.
so passionate about this scheme. So in 2017, I took over as welfare lead for the department, or pastoral lead, which I still am, and I really the role came from our head of department and our course lead at the time. They're very innovative and recognised that actually we needed to be doing something to look at the welfare of our students because of the environments that they were going into. And the initial concept of the Blue Light Champions came from me stepping into that role around the time that there were some incredibly horrendous and tragic events happening in the UK. So we had two very, very significant incidents of terror in London at the time, and some of our students had been there and they'd been exposed to those horrendous scenes. So when we were looking as a course team, and me particularly as a welfare lead, we were looking at what is it that we can do to support these students. We can't, ignore the elephant in the room of what they're seeing and doing as human beings, let alone human beings that are in significant periods of transition in their own lives. So, we don't always talk about the fact that our students are coming to us often with their own previous worries, physical health and mental health challenges, socioeconomic challenges, academic pressures. They're coming to us, and then we're sending them into frontline ambulances, and then there's the risk that they see absolutely horrendous suffering. And so I realised as a welfare lead that I couldn't do welfare as a single person. It needed to be a golden thread that ran through our whole team, and we have a wonderful team who all take an active role in providing support to students. But I also realised the power of them supporting each other. So peer support has long been established in mental health as a really important tool, because it allows people to share lived experience, from somebody who's been there, done that, understands it. And so for me, it was about how could we create a culture whereby students could go to somebody who could absolutely empathise and have authenticity, B, who would be able to relate in terms of things like the fears around placement or academic study, and also feel perhaps taking away some of those barriers between academic staff and students, because it can feel challenging to come and say that you're struggling. And if we were going to change the culture around conversations about mental health, we had to do it together. So it couldn't just be me, and it couldn't just be us as an academic team, or indeed as a university. It had to be from within. Hopefully I'm making sense, Karl, because like I said, I tend to go off. So then we started with a really small group of students who were passionate about mental health. They had to be in year 3 because we felt that they had to have gone through some training. They had to have gone through our mental health module so that they were fully sort of ready to take on that role. And there were 5 original Blue Light Champions in 2017. Okay. And what they started to do was, little events. So they would do sort of fundraising. They did sort of tea and coffee mornings, that kind of thing, to get more visibility. We made sure they had an identity. So they had a T-shirt and a lanyard, and they then could choose when they were doing their role, which is also really important. And some of the responses, not necessarily from within the university, were quite interesting, to be honest, Carl. I think people kind of thought, well, what are they doing, and why do they need that? You know, what's that about? And there was a little bit, I think, of some stigma faced, like around the role itself to begin with. What are those students doing? Why would they want to be working in a mental health role? And over time, we now have we have 20 blue light champions now, 23, which is a fifth of our cohort. So we have 1 in 5 of our third years volunteer. So that it has really, really grown exponentially over the time because of those attitude shifts, and also because of the success of things like the conference and the support that students have got. And they see the blue light champions in assessment support rooms, or OSPE rooms as we call them, who are providing reassurance before exams. That visibility then carries the students being reassured by third years who basically say, you can do it because we have, it's going to be all right. You can breaking down barriers between staff and students. So then what happens is that then the younger cohorts then say, I want to be a blue light champion, I want to do that. They were there for me, they understood my problems, and it's kind of grown in that way. In terms of making the scheme, how have we kept it going over the time? It's been students who've wanted to do it, but in my view, you have to be completely and utterly bought into it. So you have to trust the students that they know best, what type of support students need, or what they would like to see. And that's with some support and governance from us, obviously, but things like the events that the students would want to do, social media posts that they would like to see. It could be things like involving them in question and answer sessions about placement, so that the students truly can ask questions of students that they're worried about, because sometimes the expectations between academics and students don't necessarily line up. I'm standing there saying, this is how you get your PAD document signed, and actually the students want to know, what happens if I can't find the key code to get in? Or can I use the microwave? And they're the kind of questions they will ask the blue light champions. So you have to be brought in, you have to trust the students, you have to value them and see them as a really important part of that culture and be authentic about it. So we include our student blue light champions in elements of teaching. They do the induction process with us. We can refer to them. So if a personal tutor identifies that we've got a first year student who's homesick, then we will say, would you mind if we contacted a blue light champion on your behalf and introduce you? Because that third year has maybe shared with us that they went through those similar experiences. So we kind of have this bi-directional referral, and then obviously the blue light champions can refer back. So I've probably gone off on a tangent, but I think the heart of it is in order for it to succeed, or the reason perhaps why it's worked, is we've embraced it. We value our peer supporters. We understand the layer of support that they provide is not something that we can provide, and we sort of authentically trust them with decision making. In terms of, do our alumni stay in touch? Yes, they do. Often they've gone into leadership roles, we're really proud to say, and some of them have gone into absolute pioneering mental health roles as well. And I often feel like a very proud parent talking about these particular students. But they have gone into management roles in the ambulance service, and I often will see that they are the practice educators or practice educator leads or clinical team managers who then refer to us and let us know if a student has seen something traumatic on placement. So we then can do some wraparound support of that student because it's come via a link tutor through them and they have been a previous blue light champion. So that legacy or that ripple, in my view, and it's not always perfect, these things aren't, but are really changing our culture in that respect.
It's really interesting. I've been reflecting on a number of things. They said, one of the first things that you picked up, because I think you're almost in a way describing the building of a movement that's coming from the bottom, that's designed to change. Firstly, this concept that you used of a golden thread, that everyone understands that this is just not something that's sitting in the brochure that says come to City St George's, because it's actually woven through the fabric of the whole course and the whole student experience. And I really like what you said about seeing people as a whole person, because I was reflecting back many years maybe of my first day at university. I wasn't suddenly a student. I was a person that had fears, concerns, challenges, taken out of a very supportive environment, school and home, and dropped with all of these strangers that were weird, that weren't necessarily like me, which I think is really important. I think so. The golden thread is really important, that you're not only saying it, but you're doing it. And a key thing that you've used in two ways is the word authenticity. Throughout what you said. First is the authenticity of the program itself, in that you all believe in it, you're all bought into it. And then the authenticity of the people who individually are bought into it. And that is then really strong, which then, as you say, starts to ripple outwards and support and develops a momentum of its own. I think to have 1 in 5 of your cohort who is a blue light champion shows that people view this, because they've got 2 years to look at it, haven't they? That's the beauty of the scheme. It's not like Freshers Week where you go to and you sign up for everything and then you go to nothing. This is, you watch your peers grow and develop and support maybe your colleagues, your friends as you go through. Taking all of that, because I think that's really quite powerful, is how do you think that could be replicated within ambulance trusts at all? Because everything that you've talked about, having open conversations, noticing things, noticing people are going through a difficult time, also recognizing it's not always about the job. It's often about other things. Are there any lessons that you think trusts themselves could learn? Because they put a lot of effort into supporting the well-being of their people, but we still at TASC see loads of people coming to us. So something's not quite working right. Or maybe it is if they're coming to us, I don't know. But what do you think the trusts could learn from the way that you've gone about building this peer network?
I think from a trust perspective, there is some amazing work that's going on, absolutely. And I would be wrong, to not acknowledge that. I think knowing that you can't, that well-being is not an isolated add-on. So many trusts subscribe to this, but the golden thread that we've been talking about has to be kind of enacted. So what I'm saying is we have to see everybody as curators of well-being, so it's everybody's responsibility, but then within a peer network, knowing that we can't just have a well-being team who do it all. So having ambassadors, trusting the staff to sometimes know what staff need. And I know we have staff representatives, but it's not necessarily the same. So having peer supporters that you invest in, you trust, you understand that sometimes you don't have all the answers. I've been a wellbeing lead for 8 years, and I'm a mental health paramedic. But I absolutely don't have all the answers because of those layers that people face and the intersects of their identity. So there are going to be staff members who will know far more than the wellbeing team about that lived experience. So harnessing lived experience, trusting the staff, and it's about creating that open culture if we're going to have a systemic change. And I think that that's so important, because sometimes well-being can feel like an add-on, and it can't be. And people can see when it is. So and it is a gradual. I always envisage it a little bit like a rock in a river, and we are the river are gradually eroding away and smoothing out some of those rough and gnarly edges so that we get this kind of joined up approach. So it's, a drip feed, a golden thread, and you have to truly believe, if you want cultural change, that you have to buy in and be compassionate and lead with compassionate views, really.
Yeah, I think that's, and I was thinking again as you were talking there about one of the themes that make things really authentic. I mean, we do this at TASC. We often launch new initiatives. We've recently launched the sexual safety initiative, which I'll touch on in a little while. But the way that we go about that is not to say, here we know best, because we've seen this, is we engage with as wide a possible group as we can of people with lived experience who understand what has actually happened to colleagues and friends. And sometimes I reflect on the way in which a large organization can do that, because to make it work, one of the things that you touched on right at the start is how everything is co-designed. Everything is based on lived experience. And do you think it's possible for a large bureaucratic organizations that are given top-down targets, funding problems, to actually take a step back and go, let's co-design our response? What is it our people need? How do we support them? And I think the failure often is where it becomes inauthentic is, we've heard you, but.
Exactly. I think again, it would be wrong not to acknowledge that the huge operational pressures that are on the trust, I mean, they are completely and utterly, in really difficult times. But I think I truly believe, Karl, and I wouldn't be here talking to you about it if I didn't, that it is possible, because compassionate leadership and those approaches to understanding where co-production can be possible. And even if you start small, though, these things tend to gather momentum, and you get buy-in, and then you get staff who feel more positive at work, or they feel more open to talk about how they're feeling. So you have other positive ramifications of that culture. So I truly believe it is possible. And sometimes in order to, be really revolutionary, you have to look at things differently and be more person-centered and acknowledge that, yes, we do have a service to provide. We do have patients that we need to get to. We do have to do that under time constraints. But the more we invest in people, the more they're going to be able to thrive and stay well at work and get to those patients ultimately as well. So I truly believe that we, actually taking this approach can make us more successful operationally. So in fact, it might help us with the pressures that trusts are facing. But I'm not suggesting it's an easy thing. But yes, I do think it's possible.
I tend to agree with you. Well, I do agree with you. I think firstly, it's not an easy thing to do. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes focus, but it does work, I think, genuinely positively when it's happening. So that's really interesting. That's around the sort of the blue light champions and the issues. What are the sort of, just in terms of when your students go on to placement, etc., whether they're blue light champions or not, what sort of issues do they face in terms of placement? If you had top three, because I'm sure you've got about 30.
Top three. Yeah. Okay. So the emotional labour, so what they're seeing and what they're witnessing, is obviously traumatic for any qualified paramedic often. But the gap between what, in terms of a knowledge, they might be year one, they might be on their first placement. We can beautifully tier the rest of the curriculum. And we can say, well, you're not able to do that yet because we haven't got to the trauma module, or we haven't got to, end of life care or supporting somebody in mental health crisis. But it might be the first thing they see when they go on to an ambulance shift. So we've got this kind of gap between knowledge and exposure to trauma, seeing human suffering, obviously, and then finding your way in terms of this new identity of being a student paramedic in your life. So understanding that actually when your friends say to you after a shift, what time do you finish? And you can't answer that question because you're probably going to be late off, or you're doing night shifts during when all your friends, have birthdays or other things, and their world kind of being consumed by the ambulance service, and this absolute fear is the word I'm going to use, of not being good enough. And are my responses what they should be to any of those things? So I often hear students say, my mentor wasn't upset, or I am still thinking about it. There must be something, wrong with me. So they would be my top three: the kind of their identity, the emotional distress of what they're seeing, and then these kind of expectations of what it means to be a student paramedic. They would be what I think are really hard.
Yeah, and I think it's a reflection on what you're getting back from the people that go on there, which again enables, I suspect, your third year, many of whom will have gone on placement by the time they're blue light champions, to actually reflect back on that and support the individuals, because we often think we're the only one that's feeling this. Everyone else is around us, is really intelligent, is really clever, is very competent, very confident. And it's, why am I feeling like this? And that's sometimes, it's part of the human condition, isn't it, to be in your own head alone. That's where you are often. So that's really interesting that you can build that in and develop it for people. Do you think, in terms of the approach that you've taken, I'm thinking very much about City St George's here with this now, to move a little bit about the challenges, ought to be something that's adopted or thought about at least by I think my notes tell me there are approximately 50 universities or academic institutions offering the course, but I only know of one City St George's conference that takes place. Do you think it's something that ought to be part of the fabric of the paramedic degree course?
Definitely, she says, getting her, can't get my words out quick enough there. Yes, and I think with the college, I've been really lucky. I've been a co-academic lead with a fantastic colleague on a project called the Future Workforce Mental Health Project for the College of Paramedics, where we have looked at nationalising or created a national curriculum around this. And one of the best practice examples, or the given examples, is peer support. So we are trying to work with academic colleagues across the UK to foster those connections and not reinvent the wheel, because I feel quite strongly that I would really happily sit down with any academic colleagues and say, here's kind of a how-to. I don't want it to be an isolated thing to our programme, because I believe that the provision of adequate or really good welfare support shouldn't be a unique selling point of any university. It's a basic human right. So I think, yes, we should be working together. Yes, it should be fundamental to us all, because you shouldn't be choosing a university based upon well-being. It should just be everybody does that, and then you choose based upon other things that might make your programme more unique. And I know there's a commitment with academic colleagues who are also under significant operational pressure, but yes, I think it's possible. We should all be doing it. And I think that actually, if we do it together, a bit like we did during COVID, we shared information on infection prevention control across universities. And we were really happily sharing that information about health and safety. And that's exactly what we should be doing here.
I think that's a really it's quite a powerful statement. It's not interesting, it's powerful, because you're almost looking to say there should be a golden thread, to use your word again, through all the courses and all the academic institutions that take. It doesn't have to be an identical approach, but an approach that looks to work and achieve the same aims, which is great. So maybe the next time we come back for a podcast, we'll talk about how well that's gone. My sort of last question, which I always ask people really, is that TASC is in this interesting position, the ambulance staff charity, that we see a lot of people. We hope a lot of things, and we hope that we do them well. We can't satisfy everything and everybody. But from your perspective, if there was some things that we as TASC should do to reach out to support the student population and particularly those that are on placement, because I think that's where they encounter, they hit the reality of what it is to be a student paramedic. And I remember at one of your conferences, I think it was Professor Jennifer Wild was talking about the issues that you get with sleep deprivation, etc. And I don't know whether it was one of your students, but someone asked, well, if shift work is a cause of sleep problems, why do we have to do shift work? And I thought that was an interesting comment about, like all of us at 18, 19, we think the world revolves around us. But to go back, is there anything more that we at TASC should be doing, and how might we engage better with the wider student population, but also the institutions as well, because they have a duty to look after their people, as you touched on. So, any thoughts for us?
I think, and I'm not just saying it, Karl, I think you do a wonderful job, and lots of my students have used your service, and it's absolutely, vital. I think it's about understanding, and clearly there is not a one size fits all with the student demographic. We have older students, we have then our kind of UCAS students who come to us at 18. So there's great variety, and obviously within other aspects of identity. But I think it's about understanding the unique and complex kind of world that the students are in. So understanding, challenges around moving away from home, challenges around, financial security, looking at whilst they're going on to placement, not just sort of the emotional labour, but things like the students who may be facing discrimination, who may, have concerns around sexual safety, and then why they may be more fearful of disclosure because of the power imbalances that they have as a student, which we can have as qualified staff, but or as staff members, but it is still unique, I think, as a student. So I think it's about understanding their specific needs and the complexities around the fact that they're studying, and everything can become quite overwhelming when you have all these different parts of you that you are trying to navigate at a time when you're formulating your identity and then being thrown into a frontline ambulance. So it would be about how do we identify those perhaps more unique aspects, and also promoting the message which you do all the time about challenging stigma. And as much as it sounds cliche, we expect students, I certainly do, and other academics will, I'm sure, subscribe to this. We ask them to be person-centered, we ask them to be compassionate to patients, we talk about duty of care, and we cannot expect them to do that if they haven't experienced it. So we need to do the same to them and create that culture whereby they feel that they're treated as an individual, that we recognize what their unique struggles are, because that's exactly what we're asking them to do with patients. So
thank you for that. Thank you for the kind feedback. It's always good to get that. However, what I've also heard there, which is a lesson for us, is that we do talk to people with lived experience all the time when we design an initiative, and some of those will be student paramedics. Some of them will be recently graduated, recently gone into the role. But I don't think we've ever brought together a group of people, students that run the range that you've just said, and actually sat down and talked to them. Because one of the things that I'm always being told is we need to be communicating in a way that people understand that we're there. Yes, we reach out, and we're quite amorphous sometimes in the communication. But it would be really good, and this is probably, I'm going to ask a favour here at the end of this, is if once the conference is out of the way and the dust is settled and we're back into a new academic year, maybe if we at TASC could come and spend a little bit of time with people at City St George's, your undergraduates, just to listen to them about what they would want us to provide, because it is this very complex message that you're trying to get across to people who are forming themselves into into the adults that they're going to become. And we always try and avoid stereotyping, but there is a danger that you do it. And the only way you do that is by letting them lead, which has been a theme that you've been talking about throughout. So that's an ask from us at the end.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
and I'm and I'd just like to say thank you, Katie, for taking the time out today. It's been really interesting. I think we could probably go on for quite a
Hmm.
long time, but we have to think of our listeners. So maybe part two is going to
I
come
think
along
so.
once TASC has had those conversations and we've had the conference. Really looking forward to being with you in person next week. For those of you who don't know, that's the 1st of July on the campus of City St George's, which is great. I don't know yet who else you've got lined up, but I'm sure, as always, it'll be a really interesting day. Thank you for your time today. Can't wait to meet you again next week. And thank you to everyone who's
Thank you.
listened to Katie and I today. Thank you.
Thank
We're
you very
done.
much, Karl.